is it enough, right? This is all a response to the fact that kids are aging out of Lego play and really a lot of other physical toys earlier and making the transition to video games.
Hey Lego fans, my name's Graham and I'm here with my blocks buddy Daniel because we're going to talk about Lego Smart Brick, the new innovation from the Lego group that you have undoubtedly seen all over the internet, all over media for the past week. This is the new innovation that has a smart brick at the center of a new smart play system with smart tags and smart minifigures that will cause responses from the smart brick that can sit at the heart of any Lego model. Daniel, you and I have not messaged or talked about Smart Brick since it was announced. I'd love to get your initial take on it, find out what your reaction to it was.
Yeah. So first of all, it's a tragedy, Graham. We really should talk more, but is what it is, real life and all. But yeah, so I honestly, like most other people, this one kind of came out of nowhere. There was a little bit of rumor and such, but for the most part, with especially how big this is turning out to be from the Lego Group's perspective, really kind of was taken by surprise. And initially, I kind of had two reactions. So the first was really just kind of I was impressed. The Lego Group has clearly developed something here that is really innovative. Especially the way that it is so integrated with just the bricks, right? We've had the Lego Group has been trying to crack this kind of integration of physical and digital play now for decades, going all the way back to Galidor and even a little bit beyond. But, it's always required like a third party component, right? Whether it's an app or a phone, things like Hidden Side or NEXO KNIGHTS. And so the degree to which this is just so, for lack of a better way of putting it, pure. Where it's just, you've just got the bricks. You can just pull them out of the box and that's all you need, self-contained. That was really impressive to me. Some real amazing engineering from the Lego Group there. And it kind of also builds on a lot of things that they've done in the past. Light and sound has been a part of, Lego products going all the way back to like 9-volt, and even before that, back in the 80s and even before. So, from that perspective, I was really impressed with all of it. But I must say also there was a part of me, and I'm sure we'll discuss this at some point here as we go along, but that, is this really enough to capture kids' attention and pull them away from, a Star Wars video game where they can have lightsabers that clash and make noise and flashlights in a 3D environment that's, something that they can interact with in a immersive way that may not be the same as this. So I'll be really curious to just kind of see how it goes for them, whether this will be enough to really capture kids in the way that they obviously are looking to do.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about like what we see as some of the kind of positives and the potential of it. And then after that, we can touch on perhaps what some of the drawbacks are and whether we have any reservations or doubts about whether this is going to be quite the thing that clearly the Lego Group intended to be. But first, just to clarify for people who maybe haven't been paying full attention to this, it's the size of a 2x4 brick is the smart brick. That's the core of this whole thing. It's slightly taller than your standard 2x4 brick, but in there it's got lights, it's got a speaker, it's got a synthesizer, and it can detect motion. It knows how it's being orientated. It knows when other smart bricks are in its vicinity. And the 2x2 tiles and minifigures that have tags in them, they cause reactions from it. So when it's close by to one of those, it's going to know how to behave. So the innovative bit, the bit that's quite impressive, is the way they've compacted this technology down. Because, of course, some people are kind of having an almost, is that all it is kind of reaction to it. Whereas the Lego Group know that they've sunk 10 years of time, dedication, work into this. And that it's quite impressive that they've managed to create the technology in this tiny little space.
Yeah, and I think you're getting at something there, Graham, which is that the Lego Group, they are passionate about the system, right? If you talk to anyone who works for the company, you will very quickly get to the point where they will talk about the system, right? And this goes all the way back to Godtfred, who was the second generation owner of the company, who came up with this idea of the Lego system in play, right? Where all the different elements would interact. And if you bought one product, you would be able to, fit with any other product. And they have been evolving that idea of the Lego system ever since Godtfred came up with that original idea, right? Starting with Town Plan, where they kind of made it into sets and kind of models that the bricks themselves didn't just work together, but the whole, the various sets of the buildings and all of that also worked together. And then Keld, his son, came along, third generation owner, and he came up with the idea of system within the system, right? Themes, towns, space, and castles. So they've been building and evolving this idea of the system. And this really feels more than any other of their recent experiments like kind of the next natural evolution of just kind of layering this technology within the bricks themselves, so that it's kind of the next evolution of that Lego system in play, which again is really, I think, how the Lego group is thinking about it, right? With all of this time and money that they've invested in it, that they really see it as that next evolution. And it really seems more of a natural fit than anything else that they've done recently.
And I think that's again something that might be easy for people to miss is that, like, if you look at the 3 Lego Star Wars set that it's launching in, it provides opportunities to have battle play or to have role play with the sets. It's going to cause lights and sounds and responses from the vehicles and characters in the sets. But the Lego group are thinking much bigger and beyond that. They're thinking about the way that all of these tags are going to interact with the smart brick, but you can create different combinations of tags and things in the same way that with the elements, you can combine them in different ways to create different things. So they're hoping that children are going to be experimenting with this, discovering different ways to play with it along the line. And, you can imagine when they put these bricks into different licensed products, you can have Harry Potter and Darth Vader, and how are they going to react to each other and things like this. You can imagine some really expansive kind of ways that you could move this forward. And that's just with the existing stuff. Like if they start introducing new elements, like you could imagine if they can get, little motors or something into, something the size of a 2x4 brick, and then the smart brick can trigger a reaction in that brick. You can start to think about the ways that this could really evolve and really go to some interesting places.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you mentioned that, Graham, because as you know, I am a connoisseur, if you will, of Lego patents, kind of digging around and finding all of these things that they've developed and patented but never released. And it was really interesting for me because of that when I saw these, as I kind of looked, I was like, oh, immediately my mind went back to, some of these documents that I've found of these technologies and things that maybe weren't this exactly, but that it was very clear, like how the Lego group was thinking about it, and miniaturization of things has really been a theme within these patents that it kind of I didn't know where they were going with it, right? I hadn't seen a big picture, but now seeing these, the smart play system, it's like, oh, I see what they were working on, this whole time. And it goes back even further in terms of them trying to integrate, kind of these electrified systems and such. That's something that goes back, decades. So it was really interesting in light of all those patents to kind of see this and see, oh, this was where they were going with all of that.
And I think this is what's so fascinating is that there's been a decade spent on this project, but the idea of actually getting electricity reactions and different things into Lego bricks has been going on for decades. And in Blocks magazine issue 134 and 135, Daniel delves into 2 really good examples of how the Lego group have been determined to get electricity and more play into Lego sets for kids for decades. So go over to blocksmag.com, order yourself those issues, or do yourself even better and take out a monthly subscription to the magazine, because every single month we'll send you a new 116-page premium magazine, specially written for Lego fans, full of exclusive content that will enhance your hobby and take you deeper into the world of the Lego brick. But Daniel, turning back to Smart Play, what do you think of the sets, the kind of offering that they've got to begin with for kids? What was your take on that?
Yeah. So again, I think it's important here, and obviously there's been a lot of reactions to this, and especially within the adult fan community, us AFOLs. There's kind of been a little bit of a negative streak to it, and I think it's important to remember, again, the Lego group has really expanded their offerings and really catered to us as adults over the last few years, right? Whether it's Adults Welcome or just all the incredible models that they've been making. But at the end of the day, ultimately, the primary audience for Lego sets is kids. And these sets really do seem to be kind of going back, if you will, to that core market where, if you're an adult or even a kid like I was, these would not have appealed to me if I was, 8 or 9 and in this day and age, simply because they're not as realistic, right? And that's one of the criticisms that's been leveled, is that a lot of space needs to be left for these bricks, whether it's right behind R2D2 in the X-Wing or something like that. But at the end of the day, these are sets that are made for kids, and I thought that it was actually a really great opening salvo, if you will, to release them with Star Wars. Kind of a well-known property where just so many of the initial capabilities, the light, the sound, the kind of knowing what character you're near. I mean, that world of Star Wars is so well known and so well loved that I thought that was kind of a perfect introduction in terms of kind of showcasing what this could do in a way that people will immediately be able to connect with, and then see the realism of, right? If, as you know, you fly those two starfighters next to each other and they make those sounds, it's going to take you right back to the movie theater, or, you know, seeing the films on the television, where it's going to feel real, it's going to feel authentic. And so I thought that was actually a really smart play, pun completely intended, on their part to release it with Star Wars initially.
Well, there's some really nice sort of play features built into them. So like there's triggers in the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter. So when you press them down, they'll make, you know, laser sound, but they are actually firing at each other, and one of them can win or lose depending which one hits the other one more. So there's kind of
Awesome.
yeah, some really sort of good, fun, goofy play stuff going on in there.
That's awesome. I remember as a kid literally throwing physical cannonballs at we'd have, my friends and I would each have our pirate ships on the opposite sides of the living room. We'd be throwing cannonballs and we'd count points when you hit. So, you know, it's just the next evolution of that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking, so obviously in Europe, we were lucky enough to have cannons that actually fired. They actually had the springs in them and could shoot the cannonballs. But no one told me as a kid that because I could pull a thing and it would fire a cannonball, that was limiting my imaginative play somehow. Whereas with this Lego Smart Play stuff, you know, there is some criticism suggesting that somehow it's going to limit imaginative play for children. Do you have a take on that one?
Yeah, and again, this just kind of makes me laugh, quite honestly, because this has been something that has dogged the Lego group all the way back. It's crazy. Like recently, the corporate historians unearthed some instructions that go back even further than what we thought was the oldest set of instructions to date, and they unearthed them along with these these records, of these documents that are recording conversations amongst management. And there was real concern, like, oh, you know, is giving kids instructions going to limit their imaginations? Like, is this really something we want to do, or is this going to completely undermine the core concept of our product, which is imagination? And the answer is no. I mean, the reality is that each of these innovations through the various years, whether it's, you know, instructions, instructions period, or numbered bags, or all of these things, the reality is what they're really doing is that they are easing the entry. They're making it simpler and easier for children to kind of cross the threshold and enter this world of Lego play, and from there discover how awesome it is, and then go on to, you know, build things on their own, or whatever the case may be. But this is making an easier entry point, just like instructions, just like some of these other innovations. And so I think the criticism that this is, you know, limiting play is silly. This is something that's going to make it easier for kids to discover the magic of playing with Lego bricks, and from there go all the different directions that they can. So I think that's silly.
No, I totally agree, because I just think the idea that, you know, kids are aging out of toys earlier than before. So, and then like just putting them on a shelf and treating them as collectibles. And if like they know that picking up this X-Wing is going to make a sound, it might encourage them to pick it up off the shelf and play with it. But that's not going to lead to a session of play that is purely based on the smart brick. They're going to make additional sounds themselves with their mouths. They're going to be flying it around and everything, and telling stories beyond what they can do with the smart brick. That's just going to be the kind of beginning of that play session. And yeah, I think it's just going to encourage children, hopefully, to play with their toys. But the other thing that I've been kind of thinking about with this is the other comments that I've seen of people kind of saying, is that it? Is that all this does for the kind of the big splash that the Lego group's making? The fact that lights and sounds aren't necessarily all that impressive to people, because obviously there's lots of very sophisticated electronic toys out there, and, you know, lights and sounds are not a new innovation in and of themselves. And I've been thinking about what the potential of this is, what the cleverness of it is, and what it can do, versus the way it's being marketed. And I am wondering if there is a disconnect between what the company is communicating to people and what the potential is. But having said that, I think in reality, this is probably a really good way to introduce people to it, because if you overcomplicate it and tell people about a gazillion things that it might be able to do one day, that's not the same as showing them, hey, this is an X-Wing. You fly this thing, it's going to make X-Wing noises. You fire the cannons, it's going to make, Star Wars noises. You put Luke Skywalker on here, it's going to light up as if it's his lightsaber.
Right. And I think that's where it goes back to the idea of this being a system, right? And to a certain extent, I think the Lego group, this might be an example really of them learning from past mistakes. Because often in the past, when they have introduced one of these, trying to integrate digital and physical play, they've swung so for the fences, right? I mean, going all the way back to the example of Galidor, which was in many ways the first attempt at integrating this. Well, that was not just a completely new theme. It was a completely new system of parts. Like it was a part from everything that the Lego group had made before, to such an extent that when they sent it to stores, they didn't know which aisle to put it in, right? And that just was part of why it didn't take off, was because there was such confusion. It was so complicated. It was so new. It was so out there. Where this just, again, it feels like a natural evolution that, okay, well, let's get people comfortable with this. And then once they are, then we can add to it and add to it. And it really does seem like they've thought through kind of the future applications, the future innovations that they will add on to this kind of, literally they're building a foundation right now, right? To use a very Lego centric metaphor. And then they can kind of go from there in the future, provided that it succeeds and proves popular.
Daniel, through the years, the Lego group have had different kind of technology-infused offerings, like this idea of fluid play, where you integrate digital and physical play experiences and things like that. But they haven't always been winners. And I wondered whether you think smart play is going to be one that's going to stand the test of time, or whether, it's not going to be video, is it?
Yeah, let's certainly hope not. I'm sure the Lego group is hoping that it isn't. So it really is kind of an interesting question, because as you said, Graham, there's been a ton of these, right? Going all the way back to like Galidor, back in the early 2000s, to more recently things like Hidden Side or NEXO KNIGHTS even, where they're trying to kind of integrate this digital layer into the Lego play. And so, with this, like, quite honestly, I think there is a little bit of a question in my mind as to whether this is enough, right? Is it enough to have all of this extra, admittedly very cool and very innovative, technology on top of kind of what we'll call the standard Lego play experience, right? Where if you bring the X-Wing and the TIE fighter near each other, they can make the blaster noises. You can have the little competition of pulling the trigger and scoring points. That is a very cool added dimension to the Lego play. And there's also such an interesting opportunity for, right now, obviously with these first three sets, it's all limited to Star Wars, but we're of course going to get this in other themes, which begins to invite almost like a Fortnite type of experience, right? Where you can have all these crossovers and interesting interactions of what happens if you bring Harry Potter close to Darth Vader, or, something like that. So there's a lot of things going for it, but in my mind, the question is it enough, right? This is all a response to the fact that kids are aging out of Lego play and really a lot of other physical toys earlier, and making the transition to video games, where, they can have this immersive digital experience that is got light and sound and, scoring of points as you interact with other players in a far more immersive way. And so that really, in my mind, is kind of the question: is this actually going to be enough to tempt and pull kids away from what is arguably a more immersive version of the same thing that they can get in video games? And so, I'll be curious to see if it's enough. But I really hope it is, because there is another side of this that is, we've talked about how this seems like more of a natural evolution, right, of the Lego system in play, as opposed to bringing in an outside app or the need for an outside device like Hidden Side or VIDIYO or any of those other ones, where here it's all integrated into the bricks. And so on one hand, that's really awesome. On the other hand, it's a huge risk, because instead of the cost being just in the development of an app, right, or some technology like the shield scanning for NEXO KNIGHTS, now we have changed the physical production process, right? These are electrical components that have to be inserted into bricks. The amount of money that must have been spent on machines, on the, you know, production lines to make this happen has got to be astronomical. So this might be one of the Lego Group's biggest bets on this. So I really, really hope it works for that, if for no other reason than to justify the incredible investment that they must have made.
So at the launch event for this, I interviewed someone from the Lego Group who said something that I think is interesting, that ties together the two things you were talking about, which was that parents didn't necessarily fall in love with things like Hidden Side because it was an AR experience. So the kid had to have the phone with the app to play a game, and then manipulate the Lego set with the other hand. So it was like, it wasn't, they weren't fully immersed in the brick, they weren't fully immersed in the video game. There was this disconnect with it, where it was kind of two experiences at once. And the parents didn't necessarily respond to those products. And it was through research and learnings with talking to parents and things that they realized the screen was best left out of the experience. And that is the reason that in this case, it's purely a physical play experience. But as you highlighted, it's a really big bet that they've put on this, because now the Lego Group have decided this is the answer, this is the future, and this is where all of the investment's going. And they acknowledged, you know, the amount of cost and logistics that has gone into figuring out how to put this into the production lines.
Yeah, because I just think about, you know, and you and I have both been fortunate enough to, you know, get to tour the Lego facilities. You know, the fact that they have these massive, you know, finished product molding halls with these bins full of bricks, and every single one of those bins is taking up real physical space, and they manage the logistics of that down to an almost insane degree. So now all of these extra bins, all of this space in those, a huge chunk of that limited space in those warehouses has to be taken up by each of these, you know, smart bricks. So there is in so many ways, it seems like their best chance, right? Because as you said, they eliminated the screen. This is now the pure Lego experience. But there has got to be a huge amount of investment in that. So it's both its greatest strength and it's probably its greatest risk as well. So it'll be really interesting to see initially and you know, a year or two from now how this goes. I'm sure there are a bunch of Lego executives crossing their fingers and praying that this does not turn into the next VIDIYO.
And just taking it back to kind of wrap us up to what you were saying about it competing with video games and things, I think this is where the interests of parents is really going to come into it, because of course, children and screen time versus tactile toys is a kind of big debate at the moment. And it's something where, you know, left to their own devices, pun intended, children probably could quite easily get absorbed in video games all day long from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to bed. But maybe if the Lego Group feel that they've got an option that parents can endorse and buy into more than they have done in the past, maybe that's going to be the thing that allows it to compete, because it's going to be like, no kids, you know, you're having a few hours away from video games, you've got to play with physical toys. And this is something that can definitely qualify as a physical toy. There's no question of whether it's a screen-based thing or not, which of course with video, Hidden Side and these things, that there was a question over how physical it actually was.
And to that, Graham, it is interesting, and this is purely anecdotal. I recognize that. I'm a you know, subset of one, but I will say I have a son, and he loves playing with. He is constantly stealing with my bins, my electronic and motorized Lego parts, and it's he doesn't do anything fancy with them, right? For the most part, he just takes a motor, sticks an axle on it, and then makes something spin. But that engrosses him and keeps him involved in Lego play for so much longer than he would than he stays if I, you know, take those away, and because I'm trying to, you know, save my old power function motors. But it does engross him more. And so if you add this extra layer of play of kind of the discovery and building of, okay, well, what will happen if I put this smart brick over here and this smart brick over here and then make them interact? What will that be? It's kind of an extra layer of creativity, an extra level of you know, holding their attention, which the attention of children is fickle and hard to hold. So it really does seem, like you said, I think this will get the hearty approval of parents for its complete lack of screens. And I will say, I have seen that kind of adding that extra layer of movement, of sound, of light can hold the attention of kids longer. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting.
I think, yeah, I'm super interested to see where this goes in the future. I think that's the really exciting thing, is to see where the
Yeah.
Lego group can take this. And yeah, we'll be keeping a super keen eye on it. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see what else we've got to say about Smart Brick. We've already got a bunch of other content that you can have a look at, so that you can get to grips more with what this new Smart Play system is all about. And of course, go to blocksmag.com, where you can read all about Lego Smart Play and order yourself the magazine. We will have a Smart Play cover on an upcoming issue and a real deep dive inside with exclusive interviews with the Lego group, all about this new innovation. Thanks for watching.